She didn't accidentally miss your recital. She didn't coincidentally undermine your relationship. She didn't just happen to tell you that dress made you look desperate. It was intentional. All of it. And the psychology behind it is somehow worse than the cruelty itself. Because narcissistic mothers don't sabotage their daughters out of hatred. They do it out of something far more disturbing. They do it because somewhere in their mind, you are them, and they cannot allow a version of themselves to succeed where they feel they failed. So the question isn't whether she knew what she was doing. The question is, does she still? There's a term therapists use that doesn't get enough attention outside of clinical spaces. They call it enmeshment, and it sounds almost soft when you say it out loud, like something that happens slowly, gently, like two things that simply got tangled together over time. But when you grow up inside it, it doesn't feel gentle. It feels like you were never quite allowed to be a separate person. Like every achievement, you had somehow belonged to her. And every failure, you had somehow proved a point she'd already decided on. This isn't a story about one woman. It's about a pattern so consistent, so specific, that once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Researchers have documented it. Therapists have named it. Adult daughters have described it. Independently from different countries, different decades, different families, using almost identical words. And the words are always some version of the same thing. She loved me, and she couldn't stand me. Sometimes in the same afternoon. Let's start with what a narcissistic mother actually believes about her daughter. Not what she says, what she believes. She believes her daughter is her, not like her, not a reflection of her, an extension, a continuation of her own self, walking around in a younger body with opportunities she didn't have, with looks she once had, with a future that hasn't been ruined yet. And that is precisely where the sabotage begins. Because here is the thing about narcissistic injury, the specific wound that lives at the center of narcissistic personality structure. It is not about arrogance. The arrogance is the armor. Underneath, it is something closer to a deep, unexamined belief that they were robbed. That life treated them unfairly, that they deserved more than they received, and that someone, somewhere, is to blame. When her daughter starts to succeed at school, in relationships, in confidence, in the simple act of becoming herself, something triggers in the narcissistic mother's psychology that is almost reflexive. It is not calculated in the way a villain calculates. It's faster than that, more instinctive. It feels to her, in the moment, almost righteous. She tells herself she's being realistic. She tells herself she's protecting you from disappointment. She tells herself that the comment about the dress was honest, and honesty is kindness, and you should be grateful she's the kind of mother who tells you the truth. She believes this. That's the part that's easy to miss. She is not sitting in a dark room plotting. She is not aware, on a conscious level, that she just dismantled something in you. She experienced your excitement as a kind of threat, though she would never name it that, and she responded to the threat the same way she always has, by making herself larger and making you smaller, and she slept fine afterward. Now here is where the psychology becomes genuinely disturbing. Researchers studying narcissistic family systems have identified something called competitive enmeshment. It's a specific dynamic where the parent doesn't just want the child to need them. They need the child to not surpass them. There's a threshold, an invisible ceiling. You are allowed to do well, but not better. You are allowed to be attractive, but not more desirable. You are allowed to be loved, but not more loved than she was, or is, or believes herself to be. And daughters raised in this environment learn something that takes years to unlearn. They learn to self-sabotage before she gets the chance to do it for them. They learn to shrink before being shrunk. They learn to apologize for good news. They learn to downplay, deflect, diminish, not because they lack confidence, but because confidence was once punished in ways subtle enough that no one watching would have called it abuse. A missed recital, a comment about a dress, a raised eyebrow at a job offer, a well-timed illness before a wedding. These are not accidents, but they are not quite conscious either. And that space in between, that gray space between intention and instinct, is where narcissistic mothers live, and where their daughters get lost. She didn't want you to fail exactly. She just couldn't tolerate the specific feeling of watching you succeed. And so, she made sure you understood, in ways she could always deny, that staying small was safer. And you listened, because she was your mother, and she sounded like she knew. Here is the darkest part. The sabotage doesn't stop when you leave home. It follows you into the relationships you choose, the ones where you stay too long, the ones where you accept less, the ones where, somehow, you end up in the role of the person who needs to be managed, minimized, tolerated. She isn't there, but her voice is. That voice that says you're too much. That says your ambition is embarrassing. That says you shouldn't wear that, want that, ask for that, be that. You internalized her. Not because you're weak, because you were a child, and children have no choice but to absorb the beliefs of the people responsible for their survival. Her perception of you became the water you swam in, and by the time you were old enough to question it, it already felt like your own thoughts. That is the inheritance, not money, not property. A voice that sounds exactly like yours, telling you to stop. There's something that adult daughters of narcissistic mothers often describe in therapy. A specific grief, not for the mother they had, but for the mother they needed. The one who should have looked at them and said, "You are not me. You are yours, and I am glad." Most of them are still waiting to hear it. Some of them have stopped waiting and started learning to say it to themselves, quietly, imperfectly, in the voice they're still trying to make their own. If something in this sat too close to you, you don't have to explain it to anyone, but there are places to start. Books, therapists, communities of women who use almost identical words to describe things they thought only happened in their house. You weren't the only one, and the fact that you're asking the question at all, that's not nothing. That's actually where it begins.